My husband cheated on me and moved out 4 months ago. We were in the process of filing for a divorce, but we were still getting our stuff in order first. He moved in with the other woman he's been cheating on me with for the past 4 years. I've been married to him for a year, but we've been together for 5 years. My soon-to-be ex-husband passed away 2 months ago in an accident. Since we were still legally married, I get everything. I'm still the beneficiary of his life insurance, his investment accounts, everything. And none of our assets were even split yet. The woman he's been living with came wailing to my door, saying she's supposed to get his half, and that she's expecting a baby with him. This is the first I heard of a pregnancy. My ex was cremated as per his wishes. He has no other family. There isn't any formal way for her to get a child tested for paternity, if the child even exists. I'm also not legally obligated to provide anything for his supposed child. I simply called the police after she refused to leave my doorstep. Am I the a-hole? While I'm sad my husband died, I stopped loving him after the betrayal, but I'm definitely financially much more secure now. I've been getting grief from 2 people for not splitting the money. Not the a-hole. That's what she gets for sleeping with a married man. You have complete control of all his assets, and rightly so. You were his wife. Not the a-hole. She got his love, and you got his money to compensate your 5 years wasted on him. Call the cops each time she's coming to see you. Not the a-hole. There is no his half. He died while still married to you, so jointly held marital assets pass to you. Whoever is giving you grief, it is ridiculous for them to expect you to split your money with this woman. My stepfather, since I was a toddler, was diagnosed about 10 years ago with cancer, and during a checkup a year ago, was given approximately 12 months to live. He cashed out his life insurance policy, and with that money, went on a spending spree fixing up the house, paying out the mortgage, renovating, and basically kind of sorting out his affairs whilst he still had the ability. During the workday, we worked in the same office. He said that he wanted to pay for my shed that I had been pricing up in the prior few months. I declined because I'm studying, and whilst my husband works full-time and is on a decent wage, I would prefer to leave my inheritance in liquid cash form, so that if emergency struck, or something to that effect, I wouldn't like to be caught short. The cost of the shed was exactly 30% of my inheritance. The amounts people were getting and who was getting what was common knowledge amongst the family. He made it clear that he was offering this as a gift, and it would not affect my inheritance. I accepted his offer. He arranged for the money to be transferred to me, and then 2 days later, he wrote and signed his will with a lawyer. The money he offered me was not mentioned in the will, nor was my inheritance reduced by this balance. I should mention that my stepbrother, my dad's bio son, had arranged to receive 40% of his inheritance prior to my father's death, and as such, the will had his inheritance reduced by this figure. Fast forward to 2 weeks ago, and my father has now passed away. It's been a very rough time. My stepbrother was made aware of the fact that my father paid for my shed, and is now accusing me of conniving money out of my father, manipulating him and such. He and my mother are now producing typed documents that they claim prove my father changed his mind on his deathbed and wanted the shed included. Today I received an anonymous package in the mail of a little shovel that had been painted gold, signed by Cinder G. Digger. Someone has tried to tell me I'm a gold digger for asserting that I'm owed my full inheritance in line with the agreement between my father and I. Here's where I may be the a-hole. I made the agreement with my father in good faith 10 months before he died, and I plan to force the agreement via the execution of the will and contradiction of the typed-up document. He was of sound mind and body at the time, and he went palliative around 3 weeks ago. So he had 9 months to change the will if he wanted to, and he never did. He never told me he wanted to change it. It never came up until he was in the hospital and my family found out he paid for it via my brother, who chose to tell everyone. There are a lot of details in this story I've omitted because, frankly, the whole saga is massive. The crutch of this is that the additional money was offered outside of the estate as a gift, but this pill appears to be too bitter for the rest of the family to swallow. So, am I the a-hole for standing my ground? Not the a-hole. Your father gave you a gift. That's all this was. Not the a-hole. Your stepfather gave you a gift. He put you in his will. Stepbrother and mother need to accept that. Not the a-hole, but I smell a legal battle coming. And I'm so sorry for your loss. I hope you have enough time to grieve amongst all this. Not only stand your ground, but mount that little gold shovel on a plaque and mount it on the wall of your shed like a damn trophy. Your agreement was with your dad, and let your unhappy relatives take you to court and waste their money fighting the will. Waste a little money of your own and talk to a lawyer yourself. In case they get feisty, you will be prepared. Not the a-hole for taking the shed. He offered, and you accepted, and nobody cares what anybody else has to say about it. My stepchildren's mother wants me to sell my home so that they can receive 50% of the proceeds. I am refusing. She has told me that I am hurting my late husband's children, and that I am an a-hole. My late husband, David, had 2 children, Thomas and Megan. Their mother, Kelly, had primary custody, with David getting the kids every other weekend. Kelly was just a joy, dragging David into court at every opportunity. If David found $1 on the street, Kelly would drag him into court to get her fair share. David always took care of his kids, paying not just his child support, but also much more. When David and I decided to build our home, we set up what would happen if one of us died before the other. Basically, the survivor would get the house, but when the survivor died or sold the home, 50% of the proceeds would go to their designated heirs. For David, his children. For me, it was my sister. We were both contributing equally to the new home. Then, in 2018, David decided to change jobs, and he was taking 2 weeks off between the end of his old job and the start of his new one. David had almost all of his insurance, including life insurance, through his employer. He was killed in an accident a week before he was to start his new job. David had a will that left his savings. We kept our finances separate, and 401k to his children. But there wasn't a large amount. There was no life insurance. We did have mortgage insurance, so when David died, the house was paid off. Kelly hated me and did everything she could to make her kids do so as well. So it was no surprise we didn't have any contact after David passed. I was surprised when Kelly reached out to me a couple of weeks ago. She said that she and the children are struggling financially since she ended up having to close down her business in 2020. She is working now, but at a low-paying call center job. She wants me to sell the house so that half of the proceeds would go to the kids, and she can use that for their education, medical expenses. According to Kelly, Megan is having medical issues and needs treatment that her insurance does not cover, and Kelly cannot afford. I said no. I was not selling my home. Honestly, I could care less what Kelly thinks. She has been a witch to me since the day I met her. However, David's parents, whose opinion I do respect, also called to say that they believe it is what David would have wanted. I told them I would think about it. I know my husband loved his children more than anything, and would have done anything for them. Right now, living without rent, mortgage, I am on track to retire very early. I've decided I am not giving that up. His parents told me that David would be ashamed of me for being a selfish witch, which I admit hurt to hear. Am I the a-hole? Edit. Some of the questions on this message have made me realize that if I agreed to somehow mortgage 50% of the house to pay their children out early, assuming that is even a valid option, that I would be spending over $1,000 more a month than I would have if David were still alive, and I had half of a mortgage payment. David was responsible for financially supporting Thomas and Megan. I am not. I'm going to tell Kelly and David's parents that I will not be selling the house anytime soon, and to not contact me on this matter again. Your home. I'd die in that house. Absolutely. If David's parents feel so strongly about it, let them fork out the funds for their grandkids. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. Your husband would also have wanted to make sure you were taken care of. Do not set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Sell when, if you are ready, and not a moment before. Kelly has demonstrated her propensity to squeeze your late husband for every cent she could, and now that he's dead, she's setting her sights on you. She's shown you who she is, so believe her. Go full no contact with her if you can. Do not budge an inch on selling your house. This will sound cold, but the stepchildren are ultimately not your responsibility. If you want to find a way to help with Megan's medical expenses, that's your prerogative. But get a lawyer so that you can execute it in a way that Kelly has no say over it. Not the a-hole. His sister lived with us for a while. With us and my mom's house. But she couldn't follow house rules, and she made it hell. She was a hoarder and violated too many boundaries. It strained our relationship, and I ended up severely depressed and developed PTSD. She lived with us for 7 months and finally moved out March 2021. But when she did, she left her entire room behind save one bag and carry-on when she moved out of state. Fast forward to today, September 20th, 2021, and her room is in the same condition. I have been proactive about self-improvement and focusing on what I can control. So I've been cleaning up the house and becoming more minimalistic among other things like therapy, my physical health, and other aspects of my life. I didn't feel comfortable touching her things because she still wanted some of them, I think. But it reminded me of that traumatic and painful period in my life. I wanted to start fresh and to move on without her presence lingering in my home. I discussed it with my fiancé, and he and his family talked about it, and they said they'd handle it. She's not here anymore, so there's no reason for her stuff to be here either. They'd ship off what she wanted and get rid of what she didn't. They left me out of the loop, of course. They often do this even if it directly affects me. But that was the agreement. Well, 6 months after she's been gone, nothing has changed. No, thank you for putting up with their crap. No, sorry, no compensation for taking an entire room in my house, and no effort to do anything about it on their part. And I know they have the money to do it, because they all got big fat life insurance payouts last year, and the sibling she went to live with just bought a gigantic brand new house. It's not an issue of money. I finally put my foot down and said it needs to be gone by end of month, or else I'm tossing it out. Clearly it wasn't important enough if half a year has passed. Time to toss it out. I want to enter the holiday season clear of a lot of old trauma and baggage. Now my fiancé is mad, and he yelled at me saying I'm not patient enough, and that I'm overreacting. That's almost always his go-to whenever I bring up any concerns. He always minimizes it, or tries to brush me off as being overly emotional. His reason as to why it hasn't been done is because he's lazy. This is despite him criticizing me every day about how dirty our house is. The same guy who eats food and leaves dirty dishes around. The same guy who leaves wrappers and scrunched up paper bowls everywhere. The same guy who leaves his dirty socks all over the house. The same guy who says he doesn't care about putting in effort anymore because he's with me. He wants to break up now because I'm overreacting when I've been patiently waiting for half a ducking year. He's quick enough to drop everything and immediately help his family. But for me, he'll put it off as long as possible. He'd rather break up than do what he said he would do a half a year ago. Not the a-hole. Don't marry this guy. In fact, take him up on his offer to break up. Tell him to take his sister's crap when he goes, or leave it when you go. Not the a-hole, but you have a bigger problem than stuff in your house. I hope you read what you wrote when talking about your fiancé and how he treats you. Your fiancé needs to be your ex-fiancé if he continues to disrespect you and put you down. Why be with someone who would rather break up than do what he promises? Perhaps breaking up would be for the best. Kick both him and his sister's crap out of your house, because it sure seems like your problem is him and his family. Is this the life you want to grow old with? Not the a-hole. I'm a married mother of 2 kids, who are 6 and 10 years old. Before my wife got pregnant, she told me that she wanted to stay home with any kids we had when they were young. We ran the math, and it would work, so she's a stay-at-home parent. Here, kids start school in September of the calendar year they turn 6 years old, which for my oldest is this year. My wife is returning to work later this month. My wife is an accountant. Since tax season is the slow time at my job, I take lots of time off, and my wife worked at her old firm for a couple of months every year. She also kept up with professional development, industry news, and networking while she was off work. We made sure to budget so we could have some money in savings, and that I had a good life insurance policy since I'm the one working full-time. Basically, we budgeted and planned and had a safety net. My sister's also a stay-at-home parent. However, her and her husband spend more than he made every month, and maxed out their credit cards on expensive clothes and vacations. My sister has no degree or educational savings. She has only had one minimum wage job, and she quit when she was pregnant by telling her manager to shove it up her butt. These are things my sister has told me herself. Her husband had a child, but now he's been arrested and will likely be going to prison for the next 5 to 10 years. Just an estimate on the amount of time. My sister's in a bad spot, even with family helping her where we can. She blames my wife for putting the idea in her, my sister's head, that she too can stay home. My wife never advised her. I understand that she is stressed out, so the first time, I did not say anything, because even my wife told me to leave it alone. The next time she started badgering my wife and blaming her, I told my sister to back off and stop blaming my wife for her own problems. This is after my wife offered to watch her kids while she met with the staff at the benefits office or went to job interviews. At that point, my sister cried, and now she's shouting from the rooftops about how awful me and my wife were to her. I'm irate and wish I had said something the first time. It's not our fault my sister didn't plan better. I would hope to never go to prison, but we planned and sacrificed for my wife to be able to stay home. My sister is angry at us, but I'm irate with her for putting this blame on my wife, who didn't do anything. Not the a-hole. Your sister needs to have some accountability for her own stuff. This definitely is not on you and your wife. Me taking someone's advice doesn't make my decision their fault. Not the a-hole. Your sister is blaming someone other than herself because she can't possibly be responsible for her poor planning. Oh yes, she can. You do you, and she can do she. Don't become financially responsible for her, or you will never get her to stand on her own 2 feet. Not the a-hole. Your sister is ridiculous. She is a grown adult. She could have thought about being a stay-at-home mom because of your family, but no one forced her to do it. Stop offering her help. With the way she is blaming your wife, she will continue to play the victim, and she will never be independent on her own.